All right, so we're going to look at three skills in this task. It's probably at about a year 7 level, talking about how to firstly convert fractions to decimals, and then how to find a percentage of a quantity, and then how to express one quantity as a percentage of another. In any case, we'll jump into it and it'll hopefully make sense as we go along. So the first problem is that Sally has 3/5 of a bar of chocolate that has 15 pieces. Shade in 3/5 on the bar model below. Well, the first thing we need to know is how many pieces there are. And it says here that there's actually 15 pieces. So we need to shade in 3/5. So hopefully we recognize that 3/5, we need something, we need the equivalent, but we need it out of 15. To get from 5 to 15, you have to multiply by 3. So to get from 3, you have to multiply the top by 3 to keep everything in the same proportion. So this has to be 9. So hopefully you would agree. You have to shade in 9 of these. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And then just ask yourself, does that make any sense to have 3/5 of something? Well, 3/5 is probably a little bit more than 1/2. And it looks like I've shaded in a little bit more than 1/2 of this bar model, right? So hopefully that checks out. Okay, express 3/5 as a decimal. Okay, so 3/5. Remember, when we're trying to express something as a decimal, we want the denominator to be 10, 100 or 1,000 or a million, something along those lines. So we have to ask ourselves, how do we get from 5 to 10? Well, we have to multiply by 2. So we need to multiply the top by 2. 3 times 2 is 6. So we can see that we have 6/10. So what we've got is this going to be 0.6. We're going to have a 6 in the tenths column. Okay, so 3/5 as a decimal is 0.6. Okay, so that's our first problem. That was hopefully a pretty straightforward one. All right, our next problem is that Josh is following a recipe for a cake and needs 1/8 of a cup of milk. And the tip is that 1 cup is 250 milliliters. Okay, firstly, shade in 1/8 on the bar model below. All right, this time it hasn't told us how many squares we have in our bar model, so we're going to have to count them up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. So we need 1/8 to be the same as something out of 16. Well, to get from 8 to 16, I multiply by 2. So I have to multiply the top by 2. So I'm going to need 2/16. And so I'm going to shade in that one, and I'm going to shade in that one there. So that would give me 1/8 of the bar model that would be shaded in. Okay, the next one, express 1/8 as a decimal. So this might be a little bit more challenging. Let's have a think. So what we're going to do is we're going to set up our division. So we're dividing by 8. So we're going to set up our division like this, and then we're going to put 1. And then we're going to put lots of zeros after it, and you'll see why. 1.000. You would agree that's just equal to the number 1. Okay, then you ask yourself, all right, you just go about the process of doing division. So 8 goes into 1 0 times. And then we're going to put the decimal there, and you make sure that decimal lines up. Okay, then we're going to carry, or didn't we got to carry that 1 into the next, into the tenths column, right? So now we've got 10 tenths. Okay, how many times does 8 go into 10? Well, it goes in once with remainder 2. Okay, how many times does 8 go into 20? Well, it goes in 8, 16, so it goes in twice, remainder 4. And that's a bit squished in. I might draw that a bit better. It goes in 0, 0 there, and then it goes in 4 times, and then 8 goes into 40 5 times. So you get a situation where you get 8 into 4, 1/8 is, hopefully you realize, is equal to 0.125 as a decimal. Okay, now we need to express it as a percentage. Okay, when we're expressing something as a percentage, remember it means out of 100, right? So, I suppose there's two ways we can think about it. We've got this decimal 0.125 out of 100. Sorry, no, out of 1 at the moment. Let me explain. So out of 1. Okay, that's just equal to 0.125. Divide anything by 1, you just get itself. But if we were to make it percent out of 100, okay, multiplied 1 by 100, so we're going to multiply the top by 100. So 0.125 multiplied by 100. This is a slightly different skill, but multiplying by 100, you move the decimal place twice. Okay, so you get 12.5. Now it's out of 100, so we can see that this must correspond to 12.5%. Okay, how much milk does Josh need to use? Okay, so now we're actually asking how much milk does he need if he needs 1/8 of a cup of milk, and 1 cup is 250 mils. So we need to work out basically what is 1/8 of 250. Okay, another way to say that is we take 250 and we divide by 8. Okay, and then we can set that up as a division problem if we like. So let's do that. We're going to get 8 out here and then 250 here. Okay, how many times 8 go into 2? Doesn't go. How many times 8 go into 25? So, it goes in 0 times here, but we can just say how many times 8 go into 25 and then move to this column. 8 goes into 25 3 times, remainder 1. Okay, 8 goes into 10 once with remainder 2. So we can now got to go into the tenths column. All right, and we've got to make sure our decimals line up. So decimal there. 8 into 20 goes 2 times. Remainder 4. So 31.25. So that's how many milliliters of milk that Josh needs to use for his cake, because that is 1/8 of 250. Okay, so hopefully that clarifies how to convert between percentages, from fractions to decimals. Now let's look a bit more at percentages. We're going to look at finding a percentage of a quantity. Finding a percentage of a quantity. So Marcia receives a 70% on her maths test. In total, there were 90 marks on the test. How many marks did Marcia receive? Okay, I'm going to explain this in 2 separate ways. The first way is with what's called a double number line. Okay, so a double number line, basically on one side you have the percentage. So 100% is at the top of your number line. Okay, and then 0% is obviously right at the bottom of your number line, your double number line. Okay, so and then you've got to think about what the total amount is. The total amount is it's out of 90 marks, so that must correspond to 100%. And then obviously if you get 0 marks, you get 0%. Okay, Marcia received 70%. So 70% is about there somewhere, right? 70% is about there. Okay, so 70% is there. So our question is, what is 70% of 90? Well, what we're going to do is we're going to do the following. I always recommend you can either use what's called the unitary method, which is where you find out what 1% is, or you can use, in this case, let's find out what 10% is. Okay, 100%, to get to 10%, you're going to divide by 10. There is 10% in 100%. So when we're using these double number lines, we always need to think using multiplication and division. We can't use subtraction. For example, we can't say minus 90%. Okay, so let's work out 10% of 90. Well, that means we need to divide this side by 10. So this must correspond to, give myself some space, this must correspond to 9. So 10% of 90 is 9. Right, now we need to get up to, let me use a different color here. Now we need to get up to 70%. So that means to get from 10% to 77%, you must multiply by 7. So 9, we're going to multiply that by 7. Okay, 9 times 7 is 63. Okay, so what you would say is, your conclusion would be that 70% of 90 is 63. So she received 63 marks. Okay, so that's our answer. Now, what we can think about now is another way to look at this problem is to say, all right, let's just compute it like this. We can do it as 70%, 70 out of 100 multiplied by 90. Okay, and you can work it out like that. I suppose you could also say this is the same thing as 0.7 multiplied by 90. Okay, now it becomes a multiplying decimals question. And when you multiply decimals, what I teach my students is to just take 90, multiply by 7, just ignore the decimals, and then we'll introduce the decimals in a second, reintroduce. So 7 times 90, put a 0 there. 7 times 9 is 63, 630 we're going to get. All right, and then you count the number of places to the right of the decimal point. So there's only one number to the right of the decimal point here. So we're going to put the decimal, point. It's originally here. We're going to move it to here. So we're going to get 63.0, which is what we said before, 63 marks. So you can work it out as a multiplying decimals question, or you can use a double number line. I like the double number line because it helps visualize the proportions between things. Okay, so that is finding a percentage of a certain amount, so 70% of 90. Okay, sometimes the question can be a bit different, like this one here. So this is a different problem. Glenn received 45 marks out of a possible 50 marks on his history assignment. What percentage did Glenn receive? So this is where we need to express one quantity as a percentage of another. So he got 45, so we can use a double number line again if we like. And I'm going to erase that because that looks no good. Okay, he got 45 marks out of a possible 50. So the 50 corresponds to the full amount. This may mean 0 marks, so 50 must be 100%. And 0% must be down here. Okay, and then what we're going to say is, all right, 45 marks is about there. Okay, we need to work out what percentage that is. Okay, this is probably a good example where we use the unitary method. So let's work out 1%. Okay, so 1% means I need to divide to get to 1%, which would be right down here. I need to divide by 100, right? Which means I need to take 50 and divide by 100. This is why our dividing and multiplying by 100 or powers of 10 is really important. So this corresponds to 1%. Okay, 50 divided by 100. Now, this is something we should know from earlier on. If you take 50 divided by 100, you're going to get 0.5 because you move the decimal point twice, so you get 0.5. Okay, and then you need to ask yourself, the next question is, this is obviously a slightly different question than the one before. Okay, how do we get from, that would go away, that would be helpful. How to get from 0.5 to 45? What do we need to multiply by to get from 0.5 to 45? Well, that's a hard question. What do we need to multiply to get from 0.5 to 45? Well, let's think. I need to take 45 and I divide by 0.5. And that's going to tell me what I need to multiply 0.5 by to get to 45. Now, 45 divided by 0.5 is dividing by 1/2, which is the same thing. Remember, dividing fractions, you multiply by the reciprocal. So 45 times 2, which is 90. Okay, so you need to multiply this side by 90, which means you need to multiply 1% by 90, which means that this must be 90%. So they received 90% on the test. Okay, so that's one way to do it with the double number line that shows the proportions. Let's talk about it a slightly different way, which is to express it like this. 45 out of 100. Sorry, out of 50 rather. 45 out of 50. 45 out of 50. Okay, so that corresponds to, so that's over, if we make that out of 100, percentage, make it a percentage, we multiply that by 2, so we need to multiply 45 by 2, which gives us 90. So we can see from this that this also corresponds to 90%. Okay. Okay, next problem. Mark is making cordial from concentrate. He knows that 80% of the mixture he makes is water and 20% is concentrate. The total volume of cordial is 1.5 liters. How much of the water is cordial? Okay, so we need to work out 80% of how much of the water is cordial is water. Yeah, so 80% of 1.5. So what we can say is we can do 80% of 1.5. Okay, another way to say that is 0.8 multiplied by 1.5. Now you're welcome to do a double number line here, but I'm hoping once you've got this idea of how these sort of proportions work, you can maybe treat it as a multiplication of decimals question. So what we said from before is we're going to work out, we're just going to ignore the decimals for now. We're going to do 5 times 8, which is 40, carry the 4. 8 times 1 is 8, plus 4 is 12, so it's 120. Okay, and then we look to ourselves and we say, all right, how many decimals are there to the right? So we've got 1, 2. So we need to move the decimal place to 1, 2. So we're going to get 1.2 liters of water. Okay, so 1.2 liters of this cordial mixture is water. How much of the water is concentrate? Well, if there's 1.5 liters in total, that must mean that the remainder, 0.3 liters of concentrate. Of water. Okay, next one. Amira received, let's ignore that, received 22 marks out of 30 on her science test. What was her percentage mark? Okay, answer with a percentage using a recurring decimal. Okay, express it as a fraction, 22 out of 30. Okay, now we're going to struggle to make the denominator equal to 100 here. So we're going to work out her percentage. Well, what we could do is, yeah, we could set it up as a long division. Let me think of the best way to explain this. Yeah, so I think the best way is just to do it using division. But yeah, this one's a bit of a messy one. So anyway, always look to see if you can make any simplifications. These are both even numbers. So we can say, all right, 2 goes into 22 11 times, 2 goes into 30 15 times. Okay, and then this is a bit messy, but this is one thing we can do. We can say, all right, 11 divided by 15. Okay, 15 doesn't go into 11, so then we're going to carry the 11 into here. And then it's just a slightly difficult question. We need to think about how many times does 15 go into 110? 15, 30, 45, 60, 75, 90, 105. So 7 times, but then we're going to, that's going to get us to 105. So we're going to have a remainder of 5. Okay, then 15 into 5, or 15, 30, 45. So that goes 3 times. Now we've got to be careful about where the decimal is. The decimal is there. That goes 3 times. And we still have a remainder of, that got us to 45. We need to get to 50, so I still have a remainder of 5. So that's going to be a 3 again. So this is just going to keep happening. We're going to get a recurring decimal. So what we're going to get, answer with a percentage using a recurring decimal. So firstly, we'll say it as a decimal, it's 0.73 recurring, okay, which is 73. If we multiply by 100, 73.3%, 73.3 recurring percent. Okay, so to receive, so that's that part there. So that one can be a little bit tricky. So to receive an A grade, Amira must get over 80%. How many more marks must she get to receive an A? Well, we're pretty close. 12 out of 15 we could work out. Maybe let's work out 13 out of 15 because that looks like it might get us there. Yeah, so we're thinking about the minimum number of marks she must get. So yeah, let's work out 13 out of 15. And obviously this sort of stuff can be done with a calculator if you're really interested in the answer quickly, but I suppose you need to know how to do it by hand as well. Okay. 0 times, carry the 13. Okay, and we just basically need this answer to be just over 0.8, right? So 15 to 130, well, it goes into 110 7 times. 100, so we got to 105, 120. So yeah, that's going to go in 8 times. Get to 120 with remainder 5. Okay, and then we're just back to here, so 0.833 recurring. So just going to keep happening. And if we did 12, I think that would be just below 80%. So she already had 22 marks, so she needs an additional 2 marks to get, if she gets a, yeah, she needs an additional, oh no, sorry, that might correspond to an additional 4 marks. One sec. All right, it's funny doing it this way because, it takes me back and I haven't done them this way very often. I'm just going to erase that for a second. I would explain how I'm going to do it. So it's a bit more of a challenging question, because I suppose there's trying to explain how to do something than how you would do it as well. So in any case, this is how I would do it, and hopefully it makes a bit of sense. So she has to get some mark out of 30. So we're going to call that some mark that she gets out of 30. And that needs to be greater than 0.8, right? So what we can do is we can say something needs to be greater than 0.8. So let's just let it equal to 0.8. And so then let's work out what score she must get to get 80%. And then we can round it up we can round it up as we need. Anyway, so this is how I would do it. So you multiply something divided by 30 equals 0.8. So I'm going to take 0.8, multiply by 30. Okay, what's 80% of 30? Well, 10% of 30 is 3. So I encourage you to work this out, but this is 24. So if she did get 24 marks, she would have got 80%. Now, I've got to be careful here. I said over 80%. I should have said over or equal to, because that's sort of what I was getting at. If we consider 80% an A. Anyway, so she needs 2 more marks because she got 22 and she needed 24. 2 more marks. Okay, as with maths, in any situation, there's lots of ways you can work it out. You could have done a long division until you got, so you could have done a short division until you got a mark greater than 0.8. In any case, that's how I would have done it using a bit of algebra, but yeah, something to get you thinking anyway.